Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Double Play. I'm Ryan Donahue. This is Jack Smith. Today, we're going to be recapping the Tigers' 2022 offseason and then looking forward to 2023. They were somewhat busy. They would have added some names this offseason. We don't like it. We'll start off with that. Jack, go ahead and just list off the names that they added and lost.
Here we go. So the additions, they're not the best quality, but there is some quantity there. Trevor Rosenthal, Matt Whistler, Matt Vierling, Matthew Boyd. They love their Matts this offseason. Michael Lorenzen and Nick Maton. Or Maton? I don't know how to pronounce it. But anyways, Maton. Notable subtractions: Gregory Soto, Andrew Chafin, Jeimer Candelario, Tucker Barnhart, Michael Pineda. A lot of guys moving in and out. None of them really big names. If you had to put a label on one, Ryan, as the biggest addition or subtraction, what are you going to go with?
I guess it's Gregory Soto. And it's just because, he's under contract till 2025. It's just, I know he doesn't fit the window. You don't really need a lights out closer. Even if you can't really, I don't know if you can consider him a lights out closer, but a better high leverage reliever. You don't really need that for the position the Tigers are in. But you have him under contract. And if the return was better, I'd feel differently. But it just didn't feel like something they needed to do I know they got Matt Vierling in that trade, Nick Matone. I believe there was one of these. I don't think it was any of these players. They got a prospect who was like the 20-something ranked Phillies prospect. I believe he was a catcher. So it wasn't like a great return for him. I feel like if you go keep him towards a trade deadline when you look for teams that are looking to add a higher leverage guy, you can maybe get one of their better end prospects for him. And I feel like a top 10 prospect from a team is better than two career utility guys for not contending teams and an okay prospect. I feel like one good guy is better than those three guys. So it wasn't a great return for him. And it didn't feel like something that should have been done now, I'll say. It probably would be necessary in the future, but at this price, it shouldn't have been done now.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, it was just an unnecessary move to trade him away, and he's one of those guys where we go to the All-Star game every year, and you're like, we got to add a Tigers All-Star. I guess it'll be Gregory Soto, and you look and he's a two-time All-Star, and he doesn't pitch like he's a two-time reliever All-Star. He's no Clase or Edwin Diaz, but he's been your representative in the All-Star game the last two seasons, and he's just one of those guys where maybe he isn't as good as a big two-time All-Star in the bullpen, but he's still the guy that's been representing your team. He's still one of the better young players on your team, and he's still got a lot of potential. His stuff from the left-hand side is crazy. Just didn't feel like they needed to trade him away, and there aren't, if they had a big subtraction or a big addition, then we could point that out, but really, it's a lot of smaller names, and you look at Gregory Soto's name, and he's the one name on that list where you're like, at least this guy's got potential. He could be molded into something big, and just didn't feel like they needed to trade him right now because, like you mentioned, under contract through 2025, there was no shot clock. There's no impending doom of what if he leaves us in free agency. You had him through 2025. He's been representing your team at the All-Star game. He's one of the better young high potential players on your roster. Didn't feel like a necessary move, so I'm going to go with Gregory Soto as well.
Yeah, and further grade, there really just isn't much here in general. I went with a D+. It wasn't one of the worst ones we've seen, and like you mentioned at the top, there was some volume of players that they added in, so at least there were some players that are going to fill out their roster, and no one like how the A's approached it. They kind of signed guys that okay, 1-year deals, maybe they play well, maybe you get a prospect for them. There isn't even a guy like this on this list of what they added. Maybe Michael Lorenzen is okay as starter. He had 8 wins for the Angels last year. And something funny that I just saw when I was doing my bold prediction, which we'll give at the end of the video, I was looking up trying to get some inspiration for the Tigers. I was like, Tigers bold predictions. And this Tigers blog had Michael Lorenzen winning 20 games, and I had myself a little chuckle. So
are the Tigers going to win 20 games?
That's what I said. I was like, oh, he's going to win half their games. But so I mean, it's a solid signing. I do kind of like Michael Lorenzen, and he's got a little bit of swag, but I mean, he's not going to be no 20-game winner. So just not impressed here. They got worse. D plus. I think it's on the better side of bad.
I had a D plus as well, and I haven't given out any Fs. I think I gave a D to the A's. I gave a D minus to the Rockies, but D plus is along lines of teams like the Rays, who added one player. I like Zach Eflin more than anyone that the Tigers added. I think the Nationals, I gave a D plus as well, and they added, I would call it like a bunch of mid. And you know, for some teams that works, and the Tigers, I know that they're probably not in the market to add anyone big right now, but if we're going to treat them like that, why'd you go out and sign Javier Baez and Eduardo Rodriguez last year? Like, it doesn't really make sense. If you're going to do that and add two players who were terrible in their first season with Detroit, if you want your fans to believe, hey, you know, we're going to go for some wins last season, this offseason doesn't make sense. So I'm not going to give you the benefit of the doubt like I did some other teams by saying they're not good enough to add big name free agents right now. So I'm fine that they played it slow. The Tigers went out and added two big-name free agents last offseason, so they don't really have an excuse for being this inactive unless they want a D+. So I gave them a D+ as well, just because, and even the quantity of players they added, it's like all in the bullpen, which good on them for signing some guys who could potentially be options in the bullpen, but the lineup is filled out with a lot of junk right now, to be completely honest, for the Tigers. So just not a big fan of the offseason. I gave it a D+ too. Just not impressed.
Yeah, when you look at Javi Baez signing that, I'm pretty sure when they signed that deal, they structured it to be 2 years opt-out, then 2 years. So I think that's an opt-out candidate after this year. I
think they hope he's an opt-out after this year. After what we've seen last season.
Right.
I mean,
I do have,
honestly.
I do have some faith in Javi Baez, but yeah, I mean, I guess you're right. If he has another bad year, he'll probably be opting in. But we'll see what he tries after this season. But what I'm expecting from them this year is last in the division. Unfortunately, they were able to get fourth last year by a couple of games over the Royals. I think they'll have a worse record than last season. Like I said, in the grade, they got a little bit worse this season. For this season, I don't think they're a team that's going to lose 100 games, and I think they went, whatever the math is, 78, 77, and 85. They lost 85 games last year. Whatever that math adds up to 162 is how many wins they got. So I think you see them lose around 10 more games this offseason and get last in the division. And like I said, there's candidates. It'll be Miguel Cabrera's farewell season. So yay, positive for the Tigers. And hopefully Javi Baez bounces back and opts out and signs with a contending team or something for you. But it's really focused on the rebuild now. And it's, I know from a fan perspective, watching a team go through a rebuild's not fun. But for me, at least, seeing a team make positive steps in a rebuild is something that I enjoy. So hopefully, if you're a Tigers fan, that's what you should be hoping for this season.
Well, I mean, I think if you were the Tigers, you would have expected the rebuild to be kicking back up already, because last season, as rookie years, they brought up Riley Green and Spencer Torkelson. They've had Casey Mize, a former #1 overall pick in the majors, for a couple of years now. They did sign two big-name free agents in Javi Baez and Eduardo Rodriguez. They had AJ Hinch, who a lot of people, they hated what he did in Houston, but he's a good manager. Just not working out. I mean, even some of the other prospects that they brought up pitching-wise, it's just not working out in Detroit. And so, whereas I think coming into last season, some people were really high on the Tigers, saying Javi Baez, that's their big first free agent signing in a while. We like AJ Hinch, and it just hasn't been working out. To get to my what to expect as well, I was surprised to kind of look and see that they didn't lose the AL Central last year. It was the Royals who lost it, but I think it is back to the bottom of the Central for the Tigers. Again, a worse record than last season. They're really not built to win many games, and as opposed to some of the other teams that we're going to get to the Royals, I'm not as big of a believer in their prospects. So I can kind of get into my prediction, because I mentioned, they brought up Riley Green and Spencer Torkelson last season, and this might feel a little bit random, but it's kind of the way that I'm looking at it. I think one of them breaks out and the other one disappoints again. It's hard to have two, I would say, rookies still break out at the same time after a year in which they both struggled pretty mightily. And I still haven't decided which one it is yet. I think it could be Green. I think it's more likely that it's Torkelson, but I say in a lineup where, there's not going to be a lot of protection. It's not going to be, a lot of base runners winning many games for the Tigers. I think one of them is going to break out, and we're going to look at going into 2024 and say, yeah, that's they're trending in the right direction, and I think the other one's going to struggle again.
I'm going with Riley Green as the one who's going to do well, and that's kind of my bold prediction. I think he cements himself as a top 10 center fielder in baseball. I also had that I think he's going to get a 110 plus WRC plus, and think he was at a 98 last year. He played about 90 games, only had 5 home runs, so I think that's a category for Riley Green that was a little bit surprising. He can hit for a little bit of power.
Hard to hit for power in Comerica Park, though. That's the thing. But they did bring in the fences this offseason.
His projection right now, looking at Fangraphs, he's projected to get 14 home runs. So I think 15 plus home runs and a 110 WRC plus. And Torkelson was a guy I believed in last season. A guy had him on my fantasy team for the first couple weeks of the season before he disappointed. So I think they could have both work out. I think Riley Green's going to be the one that if you look to only one, I think it's going to be Riley Green. But I could see Torkelson doing it as well. And looking at this lineup, there's some okay pieces mixed in here. You get a Riley Green, Spencer Torkelson, those two guys. Javi Baez, like we said, could hopefully bounce back. Austin Meadows, who I kind of forgot about, that was on their team, struggled a little in a couple different places last year. So if he's able to get back and be with the Austin Meadows he was with the Rays, there's some pieces here. And Eric Haas is a catcher I kind of like, so we'll see.
I'm trying.
That's what I'll say for the Tigers.
I'm trying to find his projection for stolen bases. I was kind of surprised. He only stole 1 bag last year. He's a guy that you would think center fielder, has a lot of speed, bigger bases, could steal more, but Baseball Reference projecting him right now for 3 steals. I think Fangraphs they have a bunch of different ones in between him, like 5 and 7. I think he should try and prioritize, running. He's really fast, obviously, and we're going to see, at least we expect to see an uptick in stolen bases and teams running with these bigger bases. And he's one of those guys where if he can get out there and, maybe he doesn't hit any more than 10 home runs, you can steal 20 bases to go along with that. It definitely improves your value with also being a good defensive center fielder. So, I think Riley Green can break out. I think the more likely one is Torkelson because they brought in the fences, which should help him. He's got more power than Riley Green, and he was just a better prospect coming up. He hit the ball, or his swing decisions were really good last year, just didn't hit the ball incredibly well. And I think he can. You look at I think that the flashes for Torkelson are better than the flashes for Green. And so I'm thinking better prospect, higher flashes last year. If one of them is going to break out, I think I'd put my money on Torkelson. Hopefully they both break out because you, of course, want to see the prospects play well, especially for the Tigers as they're coming up in a rebuild. But just, there's that little part of me that's thinking, it's going to be hard for both of them to both really impress this year.
We'll see how that plays out. I guess I'm on Riley Green, you're on Torkelson, so
maybe we're both right. Maybe they both break out, and I'm sure Tigers fans would like to see that. But we'd like to see you hit the like button and the subscribe button down below and leave a comment. Tell us who you think is going to break out, who you think isn't. Do you think the Tigers are going to be very good this year? Do you have them finishing anywhere else in the AL Central but the 5th slot? Let us know down below, and make sure you're checking out all of our social media. Our ones are above, and then Ryan and I's are right next to our faces. So make sure to go follow us on all of those platforms as well. We've got the rest of the AL Central coming out this week, and we've already done 20 plus videos on the channel previewing and projecting teams' 2023 seasons. That playlist is down below, and I'll try and remember to link it up here as well. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. We've been Double Play Baseball, and we'll see you next time.